Hey everyone, and welcome back to Classic Comics. So, guess what arrived on my doorstep yesterday? Red Rooster. So, for those who aren't familiar, about 3 years back, a group of comic creators, most of them conservative, right-leaning, began posting comic book projects on Indiegogo because they were being blacklisted in the mainstream comic business. And this graphic novel, Red Rooster, this was one of them. Now, this was created by Mitch and Elizabeth Breitweiser. They were working at, I think it was at DC at the time. But when Trump was elected, Mitch went on Twitter and congratulated Trump for his victory. And in the months that followed, Mitch and his wife were confronted with a great deal of hostility from others in the comic book field, kind of like Ethan Van Sciver, and, he received that treatment as well, and they eventually left the mainstream comics business to go independent. Now, I backed Red Rooster in August of 2018, and at the time, the delivery date or estimated fulfillment date for the project was March of 2019. So that was a little over 2 years ago. So it's been about 2.5 years I've been waiting for this book to arrive. Now, as I understand it, near the end of 2019, like in December of that year, the Breitweisers struck a deal with Walmart to sell their comics in Walmart under their new company, Allegiance Arts. Now, this included Red Rooster and 3 other books. I don't really have any more specifics on it, but in early 2020, the deal between Allegiance Arts and Walmart was announced, and the first issues were put on sale in shops, including the first issue of Red Rooster, which was the first 22 pages of this graphic novel that backers had supported on Indiegogo. This was in, I think, February, so a little over a year ago. Bear in mind that the people who initially backed the project on Indiegogo had still not received the graphic novel they paid for. It was around this time that Allegiance Arts sent a digital file of the first issue of Red Rooster to people, which, okay, fine, but it's like, okay, I paid for a 60-page graphic novel, not a 22-page digital file. But then the pandemic hit and the lockdowns and all that. I don't think it's a stretch to say that a lot of people weren't thrilled to see the graphic novel they had paid for now being sold over the counter in Walmart while they were still waiting for the actual book to arrive. And I was one of them, and I didn't buy that first issue of Red Rooster in Walmart because I'd already paid for it. I did purchase a couple of their other books, the first issue of a series called The Futurists. I did a review of that issue. I'll put a link to that in here. I've actually backed a few Indiegogo graphic novels, and I've received them, and I need to review them. I'll start trying to get that done in the next few weeks. So now that I have Red Rooster, is it any good? Okay, so let's just go ahead and get into this. Now, the story is set in 1930. And this hero, Red Rooster, his real name is Frank Cooper. He's a hero in Heartland, America. He operates kind of in the Dust Bowl area, and he's become something of a celebrity. He's a pitchman for this drink called Kapow Cola, and he appears in newsreels. Like this is like a newsreel about his exploits. And he also has an official fan club, and kids can join, and they can, if they buy enough Kapow Cola, they can send in bottle caps to get a free decoder ring, that kind of thing. And he works with a group of heroes called the Order of the Dawn, and these are the other ones here. He has a sidekick called Strong Boy, and there's a female character named Ms. Midnight, and this guy, Pilgrim Shadow, is kind of a cowboy-type character. Now, the story is, it's about the downfall of Red Rooster. As the story starts, he's already well-established as a hero. He's famous. He's been active for a while. And we start off, he's shooting this commercial for Kapow Cola when Ms. Midnight shows up and tells him that several of his enemies have been sprung from prison. And one of them was seen boarding a train for this place called Big Town, which is, I guess, Red Rooster's hometown, although they never say what state it's in. They never really tell you that. And here we see Strong Boy, his sidekick, and they have a bit of a disagreement here. And this is a thing that recurs through the issue, through the graphic novel. Red Rooster and Strong Boy don't really get along too well. But then we meet the villains, the various villains. And they've all been freed from prison by this guy who never gives his name. We don't know who he is. But he says, you know, his main concern, he says, isn't really so much killing Red Rooster. He wants to destroy kind of the belief or the faith that people have in Red Rooster. He wants to destroy his image, his character. And he says, you know, and after we've done all that, if you want to kill Red Rooster, that's fine. But we want to discredit him and humiliate him. That's the main thing. So Red Rooster and Midnight and the others, they fly in Ms. Midnight's plane to Big Town here. And Red Rooster and Strong Boy, they hop in the cycle and they're going to, well, I'll show that in a second. But Ms. Midnight says there's an issue, something with the plane, you know, it was making some clunky noise, I'm going to fix it. The villains are already there. And let's see. Okay, so Red Rooster and Strong Boy, they go to Frank Cooper's farm. And he's got this barn, and the barn is kind of like his bat cave. He's got, you know, a rooster mobile, he's got trophies and all this stuff in it. And it's actually his family's farm. His parents still run the place. And again, they get into an argument here again. So Strong Boy doesn't like the whole being more commercialized. You know, he feels like Red Rooster is kind of sold out. He's too concerned with making money and pitching, you know, various products than he is in fighting crime. And Frank Cooper, you know, Red Rooster says, well, look, crime fighting costs money, okay? And this is the best solution I could come up with to get that money, because he's not Bruce Wayne. He's not famous, or, well, I mean, he is now, but he wasn't famous or rich to begin with. So, you know, how do you pay to wage a war on crime? You know, you got to get the money from somewhere. And then, so Pilgrim's Shadow shows up, and he says, hey, I saw one of the villains in town, and this is, so this evening, like, the county fair is beginning. And he says, you know, I mean, if I wanted to cause a lot of mayhem or hurt a lot of people, where would I do it? You know, you do it at the county fair. So they realize that's probably the villain's target. And so they head out to the fair. But the villains, one of the villains, this guy's called 4D Man. He has electric power, so why he's called 4D Man, I don't know. Anyway, he kills the parents. And then he gets into the barn, and they set the barn on fire and burn the place down. And they steal Red Rooster's Roostermobile. Now, back at the airfield, Ms. Midnight, she hears a noise in this crate. It's one of the villains who pops out and attacks her. She's actually attacked by two of them. And she defeats both of them. Then she sees a plane taking off, and she's thinking, why is someone taking off this time of night? And then the mastermind, whatever you want to call him, he tells her, well, we're going to release nerve gas on the county fair and kill everybody. And she demands to know why, but then all these bugs kind of pop out. He basically kind of disintegrates into this pile of bugs or insects. It's kind of freaky. So she hops in her plane to go after the other guy. Now, the villains are causing mayhem at the county fair. Red Rooster and Strong Boy show up. They get into a brawl. Pilgrim's Shadow shows up too. Then 4D Man and his kind of female partner, they show up. They run over Pilgrim's Shadow with the Roostermobile. And 4D Man, he's put on a Red Rooster costume, and I guess he's done this to help further the whole idea of discrediting Red Rooster. You know, if he'll do all these terrible things while dressed up as Red Rooster, it'll hurt his reputation, I guess. Okay, then Red Rooster has this pet dog named Rascal, and Red Rascal bites down on this electro gauntlet, whatever you want to call it, the thing he uses to shoot lightning, and damages it. So his lightning doesn't work. So then Red Rooster goes after 4D Man, while Strong Boy and this other villain, they get into a brawl. And 4D Man flees into the House of Mirrors. And this other guy, he's flying towards the county fair. And Ms. Midnight is able to kind of lasso his plane and get on board it. It's kind of crazy that she can do this, but she pulls it off. And Red Rooster and the other guy, Red Rooster is seeking him in the Hall of Mirrors. But of course, the guy's dressed as him, so when he sees one of the mirrors, he's not sure, is this me or is this a reflection? Or is that the other guy? So he takes off his mask to help distinguish them from each other. Strong Boy beats the other villain. Red Rooster defeats 4D Man. Then the plane's coming down on the fair. They get into a struggle over control of the plane. Then 4D Man, he sees this like electrical box, some kind of power conduit box, and he connects his electro gauntlet or whatever to the county fair's electric grid, and 4D Man's electric power runs wild. The electricity is conducted by the Ferris wheel, which is right next door. It seems to open some kind of portal, and people and objects are getting sucked into it. And then the plane flies into the portal. And then the portal disappears. And the next day, kind of in the aftermath of this, Strong Boy confronts Red Rooster and says, look, I told you this was all a bad idea. I told you that trying to be famous was a distraction. And part of the, they've got a lot of people who are hurt or injured or missing. And part of it is because when they were fighting these villains at the county fair, a lot of people thought it was an act, that this was some kind of a show. And so they were sticking around to watch the show instead of trying to get to safety. So Strong Boy points out that kind of because of our fame that we've got so many people hurt and injured. And then Strong Boy quits. And he tells Red Rooster that, someone's going to have to answer for all this. There's a lot of people hurt, a lot of people dead. And the villains are mostly all dead now. They're going to be coming after us. So he quits and walks away. And then Red Rooster, he quits. He takes off his costume and he goes on the run, basically. And at the end here, he's on a train. And these guys are going to rob him, but then they realize who he is. They realize he's Red Rooster. There are these wanted posters out for him. And it just ends with them about to wake him up. As far as the content, I like the art by Mitch Breitweiser. The art in this has a very rough feel to it. In some places it feels as if the artwork was rushed, as if it wasn't quite finished, which seems odd in a book that was 2 years late, but I think that actually kind of works here. Mitch Breitweiser said he was going to try and do a more old-fashioned story about an old-fashioned hero. And if you look at comics from the 30s, compared to today, the art is pretty rough. And I think the art in this actually helps give it somewhat of the feel of the past, of yesteryear, so to speak. It has kind of a pulp feel to it, a kind of pulpy feel. Kind of like a pulp novel. You can easily imagine Red Rooster fighting alongside the Phantom or the Shadow. None of the heroes have powers, really, and aside from 4D Man, who has these electric gloves, none of the villains have powers either. Now, having said that, I do have some problems with the story. I felt that we really needed more background on the characters, especially Red Rooster himself. How did Cooper come to be a masked vigilante, and why? We're never really told. And why did the other heroes become involved? Again, we don't know. The one who seems most clearly defined in terms of personality or attitude is really Strong Boy. but Red Rooster remains something of an enigma. And honestly, Ms. Midnight comes across as really being the main hero when you think about it. She's the one she defeats 2 villains by herself, and then she's the one who stops the attack on the county fair, and she does it all single-handedly. While Red Rooster, he fights 2 villains and doesn't really defeat them. Things just kind of go crazy, and the villains kind of defeat themselves. Because we don't really know much about him other than that he served in World War I, we can only go by what he does in the story, and he doesn't really actually do all that much. And he comes across as a bit arrogant and also foolish, as Strong Boy's warnings about focusing on commercialism come back to haunt them. And several people are killed, including Red Rooster's parents. Because of this, you don't really feel that bad for him in the end when everything falls apart and he goes on the run. It seems like if he was this true blue hero, like Mitch Breitweiser said he wanted him to be, he would face the consequences of his actions instead of taking his mask off and going on the run. Now, the actual plot, is fine. It's your standard, the hero's enemies join forces to defeat him kind of thing. And the man behind it all, who's a bit of a mystery, we have no idea who he is. He never gives a name, but he seems to hint at this being part of something bigger. The Order of the Dawn has this motto that gets mentioned a couple of times, and Red Rooster says that it's an ancient creed, suggesting again that there's some history to this that we don't know about, and I would have liked more information on this. So, overall, it's a fairly entertaining comic, but the story ends kind of abruptly. It seemed like an odd place for them to end it. It just sort of ends rather than having like a clear conclusion. It seems like it would have made more sense to kind of end it here with him going on the run. I don't really know what the point is of giving us this extra couple of pages. So it's an entertaining comic. I would have preferred the story have more background about the characters, but I'm intrigued by this world that Mitch Breitweiser has created here, and I wouldn't mind seeing what happens to Red Rooster and these other characters. There's clearly a setup here for a sequel, although they haven't announced anything like that. So, I give this, if this had been on time, I'd be a lot more favorable to review it positively, but, it's 2 years late. That's a lot. I'll give it barely a thumbs up, I guess. Although I think how the Breitweisers handled the fulfillment on this, it kind of soured me on what they might do in the future. Now, did you back this project? And if so, would you back any future projects from Allegiance Arts? Let me know in the comments. Please hit the like button before you go. Also, please sub to the channel and hit the bell for notifications. And I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching.